Hi friends, welcome back to a new episode of Beauty History. I am your host, Allison Chase. Beauty History is where we take a deep dive into the life, legacy, and history of someone in the fashion or beauty world. But before we go any further, let's take a second to grab our iced coffee or a hot coffee. Let's take a sip and let's get started. Now, in the Beauty History series, we have talked a lot about European icons. But today we're going to talk about an American icon, Charles Louis Tiffany of the Tiffany & Company. Now, some of you might be thinking, jewelry, is that really related to fashion and beauty? Yes, it certainly is. And we've talked about other Americans in this series before. We talked about Estee Lauder, and I think that's the only one. Every other one has been European. So I think it makes sense to talk about another icon from the USA. Now, Charles Louis Tiffany was born on February 15th, 1812 to parents Comfort and Chloe, and he was educated in Connecticut. His father was a cotton mill manufacturer, and at a young age, Charles got into the business. So at the age of 15, he actually started managing a general store, and then he moved on and worked for his father in the office of his father's cotton mill. The Tiffany family immigrated from England to the United States in the 1600s, and you can actually trace the Tiffany genealogy to the 1616 Massachusetts Bay Colony, which I think is very fascinating. Now, Charles had a school friend named John B. Young, and in 1837, the two decided to go into business together. I found some conflicting reports. Some reports say that Charles was loaned $1,000 from his father. Other sources say that Charles and John each were loaned $500 from their respective fathers. It doesn't really matter. $1,000 was loaned from someone's parentage to start this company. This was a stationery store and just a shop for fancy goods. And this opened in 1837. On the first day, the sales were $4.38, which is about $125 in today's money. This was a gift shop. They sold fancy goods. They started off small, but they started off as luxury. Even though it was just like stationery and just like kind of gift shop items, it was luxury gift shop items. And it started off under the name Tiffany Young and Ellis. I'm not certain who Ellis was. I tried to look it up. Ellis seems to maybe be a silent partner or something, but it was started off as Tiffany Young and Ellis. A few years later, they started to get into things like porcelain, glass, watches, clocks, so getting into a little bit more refined items and still maintaining that level of luxury. They started off the bat with a more luxury clientele, and they just leaned into it more. This was during the Victorian period, and they made sure that a lot of their goods had more of a clean American style, not maybe as ornate as British. Like, they made sure that their items and their designs were definitely a clear separation from a British design. They wanted it to be a clean American style. What's interesting is that in the 1830s, most stores, regardless if it was a food shop, furniture shop, there was always bargaining and haggling going on, but not at the Tiffany store. They clearly marked all of their items with a certain price, and they refused any sort of bargaining or hassling. It was, this is the price, this is the exact price, we're not going to negotiate anything. And also what was interesting for them at the time is people used to shop with credit. They didn't have credit cards like we have credit cards today, but you would go in, you would say, this is my name, I want to buy X, I can be back next week and pay the rest of what I owe. Not at the Tiffany Young and Ellis store. They said you have to pay cash, and this is the exact price. No bargaining, no hassling, no store credit, cash only. So by doing this, they made sure that they really could only have the richest clients who would have the cash on hand. And in 1853, the shop was located in Lower Manhattan, and the company was renamed Tiffany Co. Now, this left Charles in charge and in control of the company. Now, this is when Charles decided to put a lot of emphasis on jewelry. Not only selling jewelry, but also manufacturing and collecting jewelry as well to sell later for a profit. Charles was a very astute businessman, and he noticed that there was some political unrest happening in Europe. There were the 1848 revolutions, and so what he decided to do was just to invest heavily in diamonds to then sell for a profit, and it was actually a really great idea. He made a lot of money off of this. Tiffany Co. was the first American company to adopt the British sterling silver standard. Now, if silver is at a low percentage, it can actually be melted down into silver plate. But since Tiffany Co. was a luxury from the get-go, they said, if we're doing silver, we're doing the highest level of silver. It's around this time that Tiffany Co. started being known for jewelry, and they were already known for luxury goods, but it was prestige luxury now with that sterling silver standard, and they actually won an award at the 1867 Paris World's Fair. It was a grand prize for silver craftsmanship, so that just like elevated the company to a whole new level. So as I mentioned earlier, Tiffany did not believe in bargains or special prices. So when the former president, Abraham Lincoln, was inaugurated, he wanted to buy jewelry for his wife, Mary Todd. He went to the Manhattan location and he spoke with Mr. Tiffany himself, and he purchased a necklace and also bracelet set for Mary Todd to wear at the inauguration. And he asked Mr. Tiffany, is there a special price or a discount, like a presidential discount? Is that available? And Mr. Tiffany said, no, I'm so sorry, Mr. President. Even presidents have to pay full price. So there are no exceptions. Around this time, there was the American Civil War, 1861 to 1865. And Charles, as I mentioned, was a very astute businessman. And he was, a man of the world. He read the newspapers. He knew there was conflict coming. It was brewing. It was taking some time, but it was going to happen. And he knew that people might slow down buying silver jewelry and fancy clocks and porcelain and all that. So by this point, he was manufacturing a lot of goods. So he decided to diverge some of his manufacturing. So he got into manufacturing surgical tools, swords, flags, and also medals, like medals of honor you get for different feats of valor and bravery in the military. And this saved his company, and he was actually able to make quite a bit of profit through this. Around this time, Tiffany Co. introduced the first retail catalog in America, the Little Blue Book. Now, why blue? Why not Tiffany green, Tiffany yellow, Tiffany red? Why is it Tiffany blue? So, if you watched our episode on Guerlain, you will remember Princess Eugenie, the wife of Napoleon III. She was the it girl of the time. She was the original influencer. Everything she did and said and ate and drank, people wanted. Supposedly, the Tiffany blue was her favorite color, and a lot of paintings show her wearing a variation of the Tiffany blue. Now, a lot of the paintings that I found, the color looks a bit off. Some colors look way more green and darker, and it could just be a question of maybe the paint color has changed over a century and a half. I'm not really sure, but allegedly this was her favorite color. And if Empress Eugenie wore blue, everyone else wore blue. So that is why we have the Tiffany blue. In 1998, Tiffany Co. trademarked the Tiffany blue shade. It is a Pantone color, but it's a private color. I personally will not be using that shade in my thumbnail today because Tiffany Co can afford much better lawyers than I can, so I'm gonna stick to an off Tiffany blue. Thank you very much. Now in 1870, Empress Eugenie was deposed, and Charles actually bought some of her jewels as a collector's piece to then sell later on, or just like make different jewels with. And this is when Charles was known as the King of Diamonds. That was his nickname, the King of Diamonds. And we'll actually see later on that Charles bought a portion of the French crown jewels at an auction. I can't, like, how much money must, like, French crown jewels, that's a lot of money. He bought not all of them, but a portion of them. That was sensational. That's a bit later, but it was huge. Everyone was like, who is this guy, the King of Diamonds? Like, wow, extraordinary. It was the right move. I mean, it's almost like invaluable, so it makes his company and his net worth almost invaluable. So clever man. In 1870, the company moved locations to Union Square in Manhattan, and this is where Charles would continue working until his death in 1902. So the New York Times called this the Palace of Diamonds, cool nickname, and reportedly cost $500,000 to build. I believe that was $500,000 in like then time. Now we have to take a little bit of a detour, but I swear it's related. It's called the 1872 Great Diamond Hoax. It involves Tiffany, two hustlers, and the gold rush. Okay, so let's set the place. At this time, there was the California gold rush. There was gold rushes happening across the world. There was also a diamond rush in South Africa. A lot of people were going a little bit crazy trying to get that giant wealth. Like everyday people were going out west to pan for gold. I think also in Canada, like in the Yukon, to pan for gold, looking for this wealth, because you could just be an average schmuck and then one day find a giant gold nugget and be set for life, and your great 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 grandchildren would be millionaires. That was the setting. So a lot of people were interested. Now, there were these two cousins, Philip Arnold and John Slack. They were veterans of the California gold rush, and Philip had worked for a diamond drill company. Now, somehow, through some means or another, Philip had a bag, a bushel, if you will, of uncut diamonds and gems. So an uncut diamond or gem is when you see like a diamond or a ruby or whatever, it's beautiful. It's cut a certain way so that it shines and looks beautiful. But when it's uncut, it kind of looks almost like a piece of glass. You know when you see glass at the beach that's been sanded down by the waves and the water? It looks murky. Honestly, if you didn't know what it was, you might just think it's a rock or something. It's covered in earth, debris. It doesn't look very impressive unless you know what it is. Anyway, Philip had a giant bag of them. These two cousins, what they did is they managed to get themselves a meeting or an encounter with a very, very rich businessman. And they played very coy, just saying, we found this rare, super hard to find diamond field in the middle of nowhere. And we shouldn't tell you this. Like, I really shouldn't tell you. Promise you won't tell anyone. Promise? Okay. Here's a giant bag of uncut rubies and diamonds and gems, etc. Clearly, the businessman was like, I'm already rich, but I could be richer. Let me invest. Let me give you money so you can go and get more of these precious gems. That businessman told his friend, who told his friend, who told his friend. And so you had this entire lineup of super filthy rich businessmen who were already super filthy rich, but could be even richer, even filthier. So why not? And so what they would do is the two cousins, they would collect money from these investors and they would say, okay, we're going to go trek. It's super hard. It's super difficult to find. We're going to go to this diamond field in the middle of Wyoming and we're going to come back with more diamonds. What they would do is they would actually go to England. They must have had like a friend or someone who knew someone, get a new bag presented to the investors. This is where Tiffany comes in. So Tiffany is the one who appraised the diamonds, and he said that they were of enormous value. It could be speculated that he overvalued these gems and diamonds because he may have been friends with some of the investors and wanted to like help them out. He estimated them at $30 million in today's money, which is a lot of money. So clearly the investors were like, this is amazing. Millionaires, we're going to be billionaires. Amazing. So eventually they convinced the cousins to take them to this diamond field in the middle of Wyoming because the cousins were like, crap, what are we going to do? So the cousins went there beforehand and they like dug up the dirt, placed pearls, rubies, emeralds, diamonds in little clusters, and it was in the middle of Wyoming. They took all the investors by horseback and they got lost on purpose and would go like winding and then like loop back down and like get lost and go in a circle and like just to make it like the most confusing, convoluted trek of all time. And then eventually they landed on this field full of jewels. And I just imagine men in like 3-piece suits dressed like the Monopoly man, just running giddy, thinking like how much richer they're going to be. They were already so rich, but they wanted to be more rich.
Oh my God! Okay, it's happening. Everybody stay calm. What's the procedure, everyone? What's the procedure? Stay calm! Wait. Everybody calm down!
The investors were literally picking up handfuls of emeralds and diamonds and pearls. I've only heard of pearls growing in water. Maybe they grow in Wyoming in a field. I don't know, but we will talk about this in a second. So anyway, this solidified the two cousins, the hustlers, and they just kept making more money, getting more investors. It's interesting that they only wanted one person to appraise all their jewels. Tiffany at this time was the only person who had appraised the jewels. And I guess he was the king of diamonds, so it made sense. Now, there was a random, and I mean random, chance encounter. So one of the investors was on a train and he was just so happened to be sitting next to a geologist who was working with a government survey team in the area. And this man was Yale educated. He was a geologist. Like, this was his career. He knew rocks and soil and precious gems. And this investor was like giddy and like, oh my God, we found pearls and rubies and diamonds, oh my, in the middle of this field in Wyoming. And the geologist was like, what? How? Because this was his profession. Like, if anyone was going to find all of these rare gems, it would have been him, a geologist, and his entire survey team. He knew that there had been deposits in Arizona and Mexico, but he never heard of Wyoming, especially for pearls. I just can't get over that last part about pearls in Wyoming. Okay. This geologist and his survey team decided, fine, let's find this random little field of diamonds in the middle of nowhere. They found it much more easily and quicker than the two cousins did because they weren't going back in circles. Now, what was interesting for the geologist and his survey team is everything they found was in perfect clusters. So either they only found precious gems where earth had been freshly dug up, or sometimes they found gems on top of the earth in like perfect sequences. Like, they would find 4 diamonds and then 3 rubies. Always that same sequence. Almost like someone had just placed them there. So the geologist had to meet with his new investor friend and tell him, I'm so sorry, but you've been scammed. You've been hustled. And I'd like to reiterate that all of these investors, none of them lost everything. Like, they spent a lot of money, but they were already super rich. So they lost money, and most importantly, they lost face. This was deeply embarrassing. It was a huge scandal, and it was just so embarrassing. The geologist said that like a lot of the gems that were found in this field were just literally not naturally occurring, specifically the pearls and other gems. Like, they just wouldn't happen there. They would not be found there. They would not be created there. So that was embarrassing. The two cousins were in fact indicted on fraud. What's interesting is that the indictment, the content of the indictments was never revealed publicly. Speculation is that a lot of these investors were just really embarrassed and didn't want the whole world to know all of the claims and everything that happened. So I believe the cousins did spend some time in jail, but probably not as much as like they should have. A lot of this was just like pushed under the rug because these people were just really embarrassed. So anyway, sometimes when I do these beauty history episodes, I do a lot of deep dives because I just think it's fascinating. And I learned about the Great Diamond Hoax of 1872. And now you have a fun little anecdote to talk about at a dinner party. It was embarrassing for a lot of these men, including Tiffany, but their careers all rebounded and they were fine. Now, in 1878, Tiffany won the gold medal for jewelry and a grand prize for silverware at the Paris Exposition in 1879. There's a lot of these world fairs and expositions, and it really helped a lot of people in their careers. That's what I've noticed in these beauty history episodes. And it was in 1887 when Charles Tiffany bought a portion of the French crown jewels at an auction. And this was huge. The King of Diamonds, I mean, buying a portion of French crown jewels or any crown jewels is a pretty big power move if you ask me. So remember earlier I stated that there was a diamond rush in South Africa? Like there was a gold rush here in North America, but in South Africa there was a diamond rush. And in 1879, that is when Tiffany bought the Tiffany diamond. This was a huge yellow diamond. I believe it was at the Kimberley Diamond Mine in South Africa. And this diamond was over 200 carats. For example, my ring is a carat. 200 times that, huge. It is the Tiffany diamond. It has been featured in Breakfast at Tiffany's, Audrey Hepburn. When you think of her jewelry, the Tiffany necklace, that is the Tiffany diamond. It's a yellow diamond. So originally it was over 200 carats. But then it was cut down to about 130, 128 carats because Tiffany diamonds are not cut to maintain giant shape. They're cut specifically to release the brilliance and shine of a diamond. So a Tiffany diamond might not necessarily be huge, but it's going to be very sparkly and shiny. So of course, the King of Diamonds bought this giant yellow diamond, and that, like I said, is the Tiffany diamond. And then in 1886, Tiffany popularized the diamond ring setting. Now, it's important to note the difference. Tiffany did not popularize the diamond engagement ring, that is the De Beers jewelry company, but when you think of a diamond ring, you probably think of a ring like this, like simple band, a few prongs, and then a diamond on top. Tiffany is the company that popularized this style. Before this, a diamond ring would usually, like the diamond would be low. It wouldn't be raised on prongs like this. The reason that Tiffany did this is to just show the brilliance and the shine of the diamond. Before that, the diamond would be really flat in the band. It wouldn't be sticking out. And so Tiffany is the one who popularized this style. Now, remember at the beginning of the video, we stated that Charles started his company with his school friend, John B. Young. Charles, in fact, married one of John's sisters. He married Harriet Olivia Avery Young, and the two of them had 6 children together. Charles Louis Tiffany passed away at the age of 90 in his home in Manhattan. So it is sad that he passed away, but he lived to the age of 90. He had 6 children. He had a great life. And one of his 6 children, Louis Comfort Tiffany, is the one who took over for the brand. Now, the father, Charles, is known as the business tycoon, the marketing genius, but his son, Louis is known as the artist, and his father passed away in 1902, and Louis took over in 1902. And so it was the turn of the century and turning over a new chapter, and he just helped elevate the brand and the company into a whole new world. So Louis was educated at the Pennsylvania Military Academy, and Louis's first love was painting. Louis was an artist. He was a multimedia artist. We'll see that he used glass, pottery, literally any aspect of art you can imagine he was into, but painting was his first passion. Louis traveled through America, through Europe, and also through North Africa. It's stated that it's his travels through Morocco that inspired his mosaics and also some of his glass artistry. He was inspired by other American painters such as George Inness and Samuel Coleman. In the 1870s, Louis turned his attention to interior design and decorating. So he was an artist, like a multimedia artist, but he was also really into interior design, furnishing, wallpaper, things like that. And he actually made quite a name for himself in the world of interior design. It's in the 1870s as well when Louis got involved with more glass making, and we will later talk about Tiffany lamps, of course, but it's in the 1870s that this passion started. During this time, there was an art movement called Art Nouveau, which translates to new art. So Art Nouveau is heavily inspired by nature. You see a combination of organic and inorganic worlds meeting. So you'll see lots of depictions of nature, trees, plants, sort of vegetation. And one thing that sets Art Nouveau apart is that there's a lot of asymmetry. So if it's stained glass or a painting of Art Nouveau, the tree will not be symmetrical. And it also tends to use more somber colors. Nothing bright, nothing flashy, definitely more muted down. So in 1879, Louis started the Louis Comfort Tiffany and Associated American Artists. This business was short-lived, but it had Candace Wheeler, Samuel Coleman, and Lockwood DeForest. This was like a collaborative effort, almost like a maker's space of different artists just collaborating together. Louis's talents and recognition for interior design really blew up. So he was actually tasked with designing the interior of the Mark Twain House in Hartford, Connecticut. And when former President Chester Alan Arthur was supposed to move into the White House, he refused until it was redecorated by Louis Comfort Tiffany himself. So Louis had made a huge name for himself in high society in New York, and former President Chester Alan Arthur said, if you don't get this guy to renovate my wings and where I'm going to be staying, I'm not going to move in there. So that's another power move. So in 1885, the Tiffany Glass Company was incorporated, but then in 1902, it was renamed to Tiffany Studios. In 1878, that is when Louis started dabbling in stained glass, and we will see a lot of this coming up. Stained glass, Tiffany glass. He was really into that type of art medium. Around this time, Louis got his hands on a patent. This was the Stanford Bray patent. So if you can imagine stained glass, this is a copper foil technique. So what this does is if you see a piece of stained glass, you wrap a piece of foil around it, copper foil, and then you attach other pieces of glass together, and then you solder all of them together. You can make windows and lamps using this technique, and it wasn't very popular until Tiffany started using it. And now that I've told you this technique about stained glass and Tiffany lamps, you're going to see this copper foil method everywhere. Some of Lewis's earliest Tiffany lamps were seen at the 1893 World's Fair in Chicago, and then in 1900 at the World Exposition in Paris. This is where Lewis won a gold medal for stained glass named the Four Seasons. Tiffany's first commercially produced lamps were in 1895, and around this time it really was stained glass windows, and Tiffany lamps that took over Tiffany Studios. That was all the production, that's all that they did. And at the peak, the factory had more than 300 artisans led by a team of women designers. They were sometimes referred to as the Tiffany Girls, and this was led by Clara Driscoll. She was the head of the women's glass cutting department. Clara Driscoll designed more than 30 Tiffany lamps. Some of her most famous lamps are the Wisteria, Dragonfly, Peony, and her first creation was the Daffodil. So as I mentioned, Lewis was a multimedia artist. He put together or pulled together all of his artistry, creativity, willpower into the Laurelton Hall. This was located in Laurel Hollow, Long Island, New York, and it was completed in 1905. It had 84 rooms, and sat on 600 acres of land. Lewis designed everything. He designed the rooms, the wallpapers, the furniture, the cutlery, like he designed everything. This was his magnus opus. This house, this mansion, this estate was a living, breathing piece of art. It was a piece of art, it was a museum, it was all of it combined. Unfortunately, it burnt down in 1957, which is tragic. It's like having a museum go up in flames and lose every single artifact and painting inside. It's bad. But there are a few photos of the house. I mean, there aren't that many because this was someone's home, so they didn't really invite many people inside to take photos of their kitchen and living room. But as you can see, there is a lot of intent and design in every single aspect of this house. It was tremendous. It really was like his biggest feat in the artist world. It was magnificent. Louis Comfort Tiffany was married twice. His first marriage was to Mary Woodbridge Goddard. They had 4 children together, but unfortunately she passed away at a young age. She passed at the age of 34. He then remarried to Louise Wakerman Knox. They also had another 4 children. So in total, he had 8 children. So he had 8 children in total. So 8 children, 2 parents, 84 rooms. I suppose a lot of those rooms were also for live-in staff, similar to Downton Abbey. One of Lewis's daughters was Dorothy Trimble Tiffany Burlingham, who became a noted psychoanalyst. Now, a woman to become a psychoanalyst at that time period was impressive, but also she was very well respected in her field, which I think is just very impressive. And she was lifelong friends with Anna Freud, the daughter of Sigmund Freud. And one of Lewis's daughter-in-laws was Katrina Brandeis Eli Tiffany, who was a prominent American suffragist. So, good job. Lewis passed away in 1933. He lived a long life. He built Laurelton Hall. He did very well for himself. What's interesting is that we have the father, the founder, and then the son, the artist. But after that, we don't really have that much information about the family. They had pretty big families, but we don't really see them in the news. I'm certain there are many Tiffany's around Manhattan and Long Island nowadays, but they really are not interested in being in the public eye. I totally understand that. I'm just bringing this up because I wasn't certain how long I could go through generations and talk about the Tiffany legacy and Tiffany family, but it's really just the first 2 generations that we have information about. After that, they're not really interested in being public, and that is fair. I found out that in 1978 the company sold. So before that it was still in the family. After that they sold the company. I totally get that. They actually sold in 1978 to Avon Products. I found that shocking because when I think of Avon, I don't think of Tiffany, but Avon Products is like a giant corporation with like lots of different umbrella companies. So they sold in 1978 for an estimated 100 million in stock, 104 million in stock in 1978 money. So they did well for themselves. Remember earlier in the video, we talked about the sterling silver standard that Tiffany uses. What I found out is that Tiffany, when I think of Tiffany, I definitely think of very feminine. I think of jewelry, luxury, but Tiffany also makes trophies. They make trophies for NASCAR, Super Bowl, the NBA, and the World Series. All very American things, if you ask me. I just think it's interesting that Tiffany also makes these very prestigious trophies for people who might not necessarily be that into Tiffany. I think that's interesting because all of those sports to me scream American, and overall Tiffany Co, Charles, Lewis, they are very American in the best way, just very industrious. I don't know, I just think of them as like very iconic American people in their respective fields, especially learning about Lewis and the Art Nouveau movement and stained glass and Tiffany lamps. I just think it's great, and I really enjoyed learning about the great diamond hoax of 1872. I got a pretty big laugh learning about that one. But since the other generations of Tiffany want to remain anonymous and private, I will respect that. So this is the end of our chapter on Tiffany for beauty history. If you like this video, please make sure you like the video, leave a comment, subscribe. There is a new episode of Beauty History the first Friday of every single month. So if you like this type of content, make sure that you hit that notification bell as well. And make sure you put a little mark in your calendar for the first Friday of every month. You're going to see a new episode. As always, feel free to leave a comment below letting me know who you'd like to see next in the Beauty History series. I already know who's coming up next, but feel free to leave a guess down below. So on that note, I think this is all I have for you guys for today. Thank you all so much for stopping by. Hope you have a beautiful day, and I'll see you next time. Bye.